The other day I went to the Hobby Lobby, and while I was there I was looking at all the things that I could potentially make with my UV printer, and one thing that I did find was this really cool glass mug tumbler situation. Here's a video of what I saw over at Hobby Lobby, but anyways, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I can make it. And I did, and it turned out so stinking cool. Now, while I do want to show you how I made this because it is actually really easy, I say that every single video that I ever do for these EufyMake UV printers because the setup process is easy and also the software is easy. But the real reason why I have you here today is because this video in particular is going to be the second most important video to the EufyMake UV printer series. The first one being the unboxing, getting to know the actual printer, but the second one is ink consumption. If you do not have your EufyMake UV printer yet, you need to watch this video before you do any types of prints. The reason for that is if you don't choose the correct prints for your designs, you can easily burn through a bunch of ink and you will be spending way more money than you actually have to. So what I want to do with you today is obviously set up another one of these tumblers just so you can see how it all works. But I also want to talk about the different print settings and show you side by side what inks use with different ink printer settings so you know which ones you should be printing on and which ones you shouldn't. I'm also going to show you side by side comparisons of what those print settings actually look like. Let's go. Currently right now I have the large bed printer installed into my EufyMake printer. The only thing that I have to do to set up the rotary is take off the flatbed printer, and then we have to install the rotary attachment tool. I still have mine in the box just for safekeeping, but essentially all you do is you just take it right out of the box, and we are going to slide this into this little hole that's right here and lock it into place. That easy to set up. Before I load my tumbler inside the rotary tool, what I do want to do is prep my item, and that is by taking just an alcohol wipe, or even if you just wanted to put plain alcohol, and you want to rub off the outside edges of your cup. The reason why we're doing this is to take away any dust and skin oils. You can see that my hand is inside the cup, and I'm not going to touch the outside with my actual hands. You want to make sure that you do not put any type of skin oils on your glass before we print, because then you won't have a good adhesion with your ink. Okay, so holding it in like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this open, switching hands real quick, and I'm going to bring this over here, and then I'm going to slide my little thing into place. Good to go. I'm just going to close the back end and scoot my tray back just because I don't need it pulled out. I only pull it out when I have that big flatbed printer in there. Now what we got to do is go over into the EufyMake software. Let me just close out one of these tabs. And what you want to do is come over here and press this plus sign. Now, before we do anything more, what I want to do is a snapshot of what is currently in my EufyMake UV printer. But before you do that, what you need to do is come over here into the standard flatbed, and we need to click this rotary. Now what you want to do is press auto measure. You want to choose the correct tumbler that you have, which is going to be this one with no handle, and press auto measure. What's happening now is the machine is going to do all the auto measuring, how big, wide, long your tumbler is. So then we're going to have perfect end results. While this continues to set up, what I'm going to do is head over to Creative Fabrica. Creative Fabrica is my most favorite place to go to for any type of PNG files, SVG files, all the things. Makes creating so much easier and faster. So to do a can tumbler design, I just put can tumbler in the search field and just look for one that speaks to me. Ooh, Crime Junkie. I love true crime. Okay. Now this is the one that I am going to print on. I absolutely love anything true crime, so this is what I am going to use. I am just going to press download. Going back over into the EufyMake Studio, everything is already auto measured. So by the time we found our design and uploaded it, the software is already waiting for us, okay? So now what we need to do is find that downloaded folder and drag and drop it into the EufyMake Studio. Okay, so this is what the project is going to look like. What you can do is come over here and press preview. And then do you see how this right here, this is exactly how it's going to look like, the finished print. Okay, I am not going to do any type of resizing or anything like that. I actually kind of love the way that this looks. What I do want to do is come over here and we are going to click this global ink mode. And this is where you are going to find all of the ink modes right here. Okay, now let's talk about the ink modes. And I want to mention that there are going to be certain modes. Like over here we have white and then CMYK. And then if you go down a couple, you'll see CMYK and then white, CMYK, white, and CMYK. The first ink that is listed is going to be the very first ink that's laid down onto your item. And then the second ink or varnish that is listed is going to be the second thing that gets laid over the top of the very first, okay? So the very first thing on the list is white and then CMYK. Essentially what that means is that there's going to be a layer of white and then a layer of CMYK. If the item that you're getting ready to print on is already white, you don't need a layer of white. That would be wasteful. However, if your item is clear, like a phone case, you will want to do a layer of white before you do any type of color. This is what this is right here. You can tell on the back of a clear phone case that there is a lot of white, and then on the front there's some color. If you choose not to do white on something that is clear, what will end up happening is you'll get something that looks like this, which is really, really hard to see. Now, if you were to lay a layer of white down behind this little image, you would get something that kind of looked like this or like this, nice and vibrant. And this is actually a prime example of a good side-by-side is when I tried to make the stained glass using my UV printer, is that I did one item that was clear acrylic with just CMYK, and then I did clear acrylic with the white and CMYK. The difference is very different, okay? The next option is the CMYK only option, and that's the ones that will end up looking like this. Unless your item is already white, you will get items that look like this on clear. If you are printing something on a black substrate, your item, you won't be able to see it because the ink will absorb the light, which would be black, okay? Now the next print setting is gloss varnish. I can tell you right now, I have never used it. I haven't really found a need for it, but essentially if you were trying to do like an animal print on like a piece of wood, you would just like have that piece of wood and then the animal print gets printed on just that glossiness. If you just do the gloss or you just do the CMYK, that's probably going to be where you have like the least amount of ink used because it's only using one thing. But again, I've never personally used it. I just know what it does. Now the next on the list is just white, and I have used it one time in this right here, and it's a prime example of why you would just want to use white. So this right here is a piece of acrylic that I cut out of gold acrylic, and I only had white lettering to go on top of the gold acrylic. This is supposed to be like a fake wedding invitation, okay? If you had something, let's say that was black, like a black tumbler, and you had like a font or even a picture that only had white, that is when you would use that. This kind of goes with the gloss and the CMYK. You're only going to have specific projects that actually are going to use those ink settings. I do like the fact that we have that option, but just know you don't hardly use just that, but you can. Now the next one is CMYK and then white. I have used this a couple times, and that is when I was doing things like this. Don't pay attention to the lettering, just look at the picture. So this right here is a piece of acrylic that I cut out on my X-Tool P2S. And I kind of wanted the print to be on the back, so it kind of gives this like thicker look. If I did this on a thicker piece of acrylic, you would definitely be able to see the difference or the depth of what this is, okay? But what I did do is I have the piece of acrylic and then I did CMYK. I know it's black and white, but I did CMYK, and then I did a layer of white on the top of it. So I essentially printed on the back, okay? The next thing is CMYK, white, and then CMYK. I did that with this tumbler right here, and I'm going to do it again with this crime scene tumbler that I'm going to make with you today. But what this did is on the inside of my cup, do you see the geese that are on the opposite side? Do you see how there is actually color there? That's because I put down a layer of color, then a layer of white, and needed the layer of white because this is clear, and then did a layer of color. So on the inside and the outside, I am able to see this design. I would not choose this option if you are printing on a tumbler like this, where it's not see-through. If it were me and I was printing on a tumbler like this, what I would choose is the white and then CMYK, because you want to be able to see your image when you print it on, and this is not white, and then you want to put color on it. There's no point in doing CMYK, because if I open this up, you ain't going to be able to see the inside of that. You know what I mean? So the next thing on the list is CMYK plus gloss. So essentially that is going to be this right here, just a little bit glossy on top. Again, you won't really use this unless you are printing on something that is white. And the final one is going to be the white, CMYK, and gloss. And this selection is the one that you are going to use the most amount of ink on. So take these two things, for example. It's a great side-by-side comparison. This right here was only printed with white and then CMYK. These were my very first prints, and I wish I wouldn't have done white, but I did, because I didn't need to do white because my original substrate was white. This is why these videos are so important, just so you learn from my mistakes and then don't make the same ones later. But this right here was printed with white and then CMYK. It kind of has a glossy finish, but not too much, right? This right here was printed with white, CMYK, and gloss on top. It does have 3D texture, but you can tell that it's super, super shiny. So all of this right here, do you see that gloss that's over the top of that? There is a lot more shine to this one that has the 3D effect than this one right here. Now on the camera or on your screen, it's probably going to be hard to tell, but if you were to look at these side by side, the one that I printed the gloss on top is definitely way more glossy than the one that doesn't have the gloss on top. Now what I just went through was everything about the ink modes, but there are actually other settings that can consume more ink, and that is using the 3D texture technology. Anytime you do the 3D texture technology, you are going to burn through way more ink than you think you would burn through. So taking these two things, for example, this right here is a coaster that I printed. I'm sure you've seen it if you've watched any of my other EufyMake UV printer videos, because I just want to show you the thickness. But this thing right here is super thick. There is a lot of layers that are on here. You can go up to, I believe, like 5 millimeters in height with this printer. So just to give you an idea of what 5 millimeters looks like, got my calipers right here. We have 5.1 on the calipers, and this is how thick 5.1 millimeters is. That is pretty thick. And when we do 3D texture technology, printing up to 5 millimeters, what you have to do is, or I guess what the printer has to do is it prints layers and layers and layers of white ink before it can actually print color. So I know that if you look at the bundles of ink that can be purchased, you will see there's a standard CMYK ink bundle, and then there's also like a texture bundle which has like a lot of white in it, and that is because if you're doing the thick prints like this or the 3D technology prints, you're going to be printing a lot of white. Okay, I have burned through a lot of white ink, and that's because I have done a lot of 3D texture technology. If you do not want to burn a lot of ink, stay away from the 3D technology prints. I do strongly suggest that you do make some though, because they are really cool, but just know when you do print them that they do take a lot more ink than just your standard flat prints. That being said, you do have choices. You have thick choices like this, which is 5 millimeters, or then you have thin choices like this that are barely raised. There is a little bit of texture to it, but it's barely raised. You can do like I think it's like 0.1 millimeters all the way up to 5. So you definitely have a choice of how much texture you put onto your things. Obviously, the least amount of texture, the least amount of ink consumption you will create. Now I already have my tumbler set up and ready to go, right? I do want to show you side-by-side comparisons of like how much ink would you use if we were to change the different modules for a tumbler this size. The unfortunate part about me recording this right now is that you actually have to send the prints over to the printer in order to find out how much ink you actually end up consuming. I'm hoping, because as beta testers that had the UV printer at first, we have been able to tell the software engineers like, hey, can we add this feature or that feature? I am hoping that they add the feature in where as we select the inks, that it will automatically tell you like, hey, if you print it just like this, this is how much ink you're going to consume, because that would be a time-saving thing for me as a crafter, just so I would know automatically that by clicking this, I'm gonna use this. But unfortunately, we actually have to send it from the software to the printer in order to see what type of ink we are going to use. So going over into just this right here, I am not going to do the only CMYK because this right here is clear and you would never do this with a clear tumbler, so I'm not even going to try it. Let's see how much ink is consumed with a white and then CMYK, which the end results would look something like this, where we have the print and then white, and then on the inside portion it would be white as well, okay? Select our material to glass, and we're just gonna keep it standard. You can change it over to like high quality or draft. If you change it to high quality, you will consume more ink. If you change it to draft, you won't consume more ink, but the problem with that is that your end result of your print may not look too good. So we'll just keep it to standard. And then we are gonna try the white and CMYK. Pressing print. Like I said, we have to send the file over to the printer in order to see what type of ink that we are going to consume. And since I am trying to do a full side-by-side comparison, I'm going to take some note. Also, you don't have to end up printing this. You can cancel. I'm going to cancel because I don't want to do a white and CMYK. So over at the very right, you will see the estimated ink volume. It is 0.31 milliliters in total for this particular print, okay? Now, I did talk about this in a previous video, but I'm going to talk about it here just because we are talking all about ink consumption today, is that the ink and how much it costs to print, it's actually 0.43 cents a milliliter. 0.3, it's 43 cents a milliliter, okay? We are going to be using 0.31 milliliters to print on this tumbler. That would be less than 43 cents to make this print, okay? Now I am going to press cancel because I don't want to do this print, and I'm going to rechange my mode over from instead of doing white to CMYK, I am going to choose the CMYK white and CMYK. That's what I used this with, okay? I am going to press print, keeping everything else the same. We're going to be using glass, we're going to be using standard print. Unfortunately, when you cancel print, what ends up happening is it does a auto measure again. Why? I don't know. It just does. But for research purposes, I want to make sure that we are going to learn as much as we can about ink consumption. While the milliliters to print is very small, it's 0.34, to buy all the inks, it's kind of hefty, right? And so like if I can avoid having you spending a whole bunch of money on inks because you printed on the wrong setting, I definitely want to help you out in that factor. So doing it this way, which is the way that I did with this, it is going to consume 0.46 milliliters. We're talking 0.15 more milliliters, doing it with the CMYK white and then CMYK, which is still less than 43 cents to do this print. Not bad at all. Now I do want to end up using this feature for my print, but I'm going to cancel this because the next thing that you could possibly do here is do the white, CMYK, and then gloss, okay? I am not going to do a 3D technology print with this because I just don't see the use for it, but that is going to be end up something like this where, like I said, you do a layer of white, a layer of color, and then a layer of gloss to make it shiny again, okay? I'm going to press print. Again, it's going to do an autofocus and then get to the, like, actually wanting to print. All right, and then this one is actually the same as the last one. It's going to use 0.46 milliliters. Not bad, not bad. All right, I'm going to cancel this because, again, I don't want to do that. I want my designs to be seen from inside and outside. I think that this feature right here is so cool and so unique and so different. So I'm going to come over here and switch my option over from CMYK to white to CMYK and then press print. Again, I'm going to have to do another one of them autofocus things, but that's okay because at the end of the day, I am going to get a fabulous designed tumbler out of this. That being said, the one thing that I would like to mention here is that today we're talking about ink consumption. In previous videos, I've talked about the difference in printing and how much time things take. To be honest with you, I really don't even want to discuss like how much or how long things take me, because at the end of the day, without this printer, I wouldn't be able to do things like this. So to me, it doesn't matter how much time things take, because after I get this printed and ready to go, I can move on to other things that don't include babysitting this machine, which I absolutely love. If you have a laser cutter, you do know that you have to babysit that machine, which when things take 2 hours to engrave, the last thing I want to do is stand somewhere and babysit. I got 2 kids. I'm tired of babysitting things. Okay, so we are going to be using 0.46 milliliters. All you want to do at this point is go over there and press the happy button. And pressing the button up at the top. You could close this if you wanted to. I just leave it open just because you can. You want to remember though, if you do leave the hatch open, to not look at the light. There's UV light in here and it is harmful to your eyes. If you do, the EufyMake does come with some UV resistant goggles that you could use. All right, my printer just started printing. It's probably going to take about an hour to get this done, but again, don't really care about the time. I do hope that you find all of my EufyMake UV printer videos really educational, because what I want to do is before you ever get this machine, before you unbox it, before you start printing, you know all the do's and don'ts in how to use the machine. So when you finally get it inside your craft room, you can unbox it and get to printing and just have so much time printing. And I have taken all the guesswork out of like how to use the actual software. I hope to see you on the next one.